Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of darkness and the world of Mage The Ascension? I hope you are today. We're going to be talking about another faction, an interesting one that is currently reporting to M20 in the Disparate Alliance. We're going to be talking about the Ahl-i-Batin. So, grab my hand. I'm going to be opening up a portal. We're going to be heading through the gauntlet, traveling to the spirit realm, and arriving in a world not too different from our own. A world of superstition, magic. Your host here, Tatarinchka, will lead you there. This mystical world. And remember, of course, to tip your host with like, describing the development, leaving a comment. As we head once more to the world of darkness and the world of mage. So, the Ahl-i-Batin. There are a number of sources I can mention to talk about them, and I will say, if you want the best modern interpretation, M20. M20 is a great spot for this, but some other books here are, of course, from Dark Ages, Mage, the Sorcerer's Crusade rulebook, and Dark Ages Mage both have some things, along with the Laws of Ascension Companion, which has some information about playing them, but that is, of course, for the LARP version of things. Keep that in mind. And, of course, the final book there, the... Sorry. I don't know which one. That's not the right one. Oh, it's a Storyteller's Companion. Why did the Storyteller's Companion I linked to? Okay, sorry. My brain and my connections too. I was like, that's the Mage Storyteller's Companion. And then it broke. Anyway. It's a broke kind of brain day. Anyway, let's talk about the Ahl-i-Batin. God. Here's their current symbol as of M20, so keep that in mind. And they are a group of mages from the Arabian territories, from the Middle East. They do date back to the Persian Empire, so calling them Arabian is in a way appropriate because of their dating back into the history of the Middle East region, far beyond what the cultures are now, but they do reflect the cultures as they've existed now. They deal with magic with a strong focus on subtlety. They were on the seat of correspondence and a founding member of the Council of Nine back from the Dark Ages, but withdrew their membership in the early 20th century to focus on maintaining of the web of faith and the protection of the Middle East during that time period from the onslaught of the Technocratic Union. And the web of faith is something that was born during the early years of Islam, so keep that in mind. We'll kind of talk about that. They're also known as the subtle ones, the Batin. And again, currently they have joined with the Disparate Alliance, but the Disparate Alliance is much less different than the formalized Council of Nine Distant Traditions, which they did leave in around 1922, and they were independent for a time period in there. The Disparate Alliance is kind of just a group of remaining traditions, you could call them, or crafts that are like, well, some shit's gone down, let's work together to keep things, or be at least ready to work together if we need to. Hence why let's talk about the Hardigan of the Ahl-i-Batin. So, in the Dark Ages, they have a foundation of groups. The Al-Ikalas, Awareness of Unity, is their foundation. Supported by four pillars called Ubadan, Faith, Al-Ambinya, Mastery of Fate, Al-Fatina, Mastery of the Minds, and Al-Haji, Master of Space, and Al-Lail, Mastery of Secrecy. If I'm mispronouncing any of them, sorry. Not really great languages, so try my best. Try my best. They are the embodiments of the highest accomplishment of Muslim culture. Philosophers and naturalists who seek a hidden unity that underlies all things. Masters of intricate patterns that make up God's creations. They fulfill a variety of functions in their native lands. Scientists, explorers, diplomats, sometimes assassins when necessary. The subtle ones use their understanding and connections to move about as few mages can, seeing and doing things others cannot. They possessing knowledge of interest to all who have magical powers. So, knowledge of the Ahl-i-Batin is very important. But they have been shunned and viewed with suspicion, even among their own people. Their vision, which transcends the here and now, and seeks to find commonality in all things, sparks divisiveness sparks the very divisiveness the subtle ones strive to overcome. They were the first ones to postulate the existence of the 10th sphere, what they called unity, and other traditions like the Order of Hermes have borrowed the term from the Crusades. So you can see their developments, magically speaking, are important. Now, if we look at their history, and this is their Dark Ages up until 1230 similar. So around the time that they did join the Council of Nine Institutions. We're going to be talking about early history now. Before then, the fact is, how old the Ahl-i-Batin are is unknown. Their own tradition holds that their history stretches back thousands of years in the past. There's no real proof that it's this old, but they hold that they are the current incarnation of a set that has refounded of a much older one that died out millennia before. So they're like, yeah, we are a version of a set that existed in this area long before, but it died out. There's like no real good evidence of that, but you know, that's their kind of belief, is they're like almost a refounding, a reincarnation of it. But what we can tell from their sacred texts, the Musaf al-Ishira, the Great Book of Passions of the Night, that claims they are fragments of a powerful entity known as Camille, or the Perfected. For reasons that are unclear, Camille had no contact with the world for thousands of years. It was during that time that the original Ahl-i-Batin ceased to be. Then one night in 514 BCE, known as the Night of Fana, it returned to the world, and the Batin along with it. Of course, they didn't come into being immediately, but a number of factors came into effect, revealed their doctrine of unity in action. On the Night of Fana, there was a great conflict between two magical traditions, thought to be predecessors of the Thanatoi and Ascetic Brotherhood, and they fought another, one group pursuing the other into the vast meadows where they were expected to be destroyed by their foes. The hunted pro-ascetic mages found the meadow was already inhabited by another group, whom the Batin called the Darushim, who were waiting for while waiting for the pursuers to arrive. The hunted joined them in a magical ritual dance in motion, one which summoned the entity that would become known as Khawaja al-Abkar. Again, I'm probably butchering the crap out of these things. This entity that found, basically, this entity was a fusion of two men, one from each of the groups involved in the ritual. Suffused with power, it spoke and affected the world around it. For a few moments, all space became one, and unity was achieved from all men and women present at the event. Space broke down and became one in a moment of ecstatic union that had never been repeated since. During the event, the Camille, freed once more, manifested itself in everyone present. Then Khawaja al-Akbar disappeared and separated into two men once more. Yet they, like everyone present, changed forever. Their original affiliations were nothing compared to the greater unity experience, and the Ahl-i-Batin were born. These interior ones spent the next few hundred years establishing themselves in the lands of China, India, and Persia, though they were most successful in Persia. They established 6 distinct schools, or Kana Kwaks, each which taught its student a different aspect of unity, and each sect hoped to achieve. These early Batini became more involved with many aspects of Persian life. Their masters of self-discipline sought out as teachers in both etiquette and diplomacy. They became involved in politics and attempted reforms in the Parthian administration that would lead to greater unity. These were partially successful and culminated in the formation of Neo-Persia, or Sassanid Empire, in the 3rd century CE. So now we get an idea of who they are, where they say they come from, and where they kind of establish themselves. Now, here's more Renaissance, but we're going to talk Dark Ages, Renaissance, kind of together here. This is 1466. Okay, start with the Dark Ages, then. In the effort to achieve unity, the Ahl-i-Batin looked in a lot of unusual places. One was Ashak al-Jani, who around 100 CE began to cooperate with the Nifur en-Da, an infernalist sect of mages. Ashak became enamored with infernalist ways, adopted them, renamed himself, and became the first devil king that turned against the subtle ones. Violent. In his corruption, he did the same to his Kanakwa, which he led, and soon ceased to be part of the Ahl-i-Batin forever. To defend themselves from this threat from within, they formed the Kubdis, who used their powerful mind-reading magic to monitor the thoughts of the Batin. There was upon them as the sects grew, and eventually become judges within. A few decades later, the Ahl-i-Batin authorized the training of assassins to be used against their corrupted brethren. Success of these assassins was so great they entered legend, and basically sullied the name of them and some ideas of the outsiders. Again, it's some of the reasons that there's looks against them. They trained these really powerful assassins for a reason, but they were really good assassins, and it impressed everybody. They weren't being used everywhere, they were used in specific groups, but it was impressive and kind of made everybody side-eye them a little bit. They continued their quest, though, to influence cultures and societies towards unity. According to them, Qutb encountered a certain man and saw him a great destiny, although he possessed no magical ability. This man would become known in history as the Prophet Muhammad, who wrote the holy book, the Quran, and received words from God through the agency of the angel Gabriel. And he founded the religion of Islam, which had many common beliefs in common with the doctrine of unity, and in fact spread those beliefs throughout the world far better than Ahl-i-Batin ever had. Now, this comes down to some issues with what's going on with it. There are some of the Batini that would claim that no unenlightened merchant could have founded Islam without magical influence. And it's kind of stung by the realization that the Prophet had succeeded in preaching divine unity better than they. And these reactionaries refused to accept their fellowship, did not have some hand in the foundation of Islam. The current majority, though, accept that what seems obvious to them, that God himself had chosen an ordinary man to spread the doctrine of unity, not through the esoteric learnings of the Ahl-i-Batin, but through the simple beauty of a new religion. Instead of claiming for the intervention of Godhead in bringing the new revelation of mortals, most Batini mages did what they could to encourage Islam's spread. I thought it's a little off. Sorry about that. So you can see, they are a group that's from before that, but because of the commonality with Islam, they eventually did kind of connect up with it a lot in some of the ways of unity that were preached early on. And, we'll talk about it more. This is an interesting kind of complexity between their relationship with it. And it did spread. And within a couple centuries of birth, Islam was knocking on the doors of Europe, and would have had other great inroads, if not opposed by mages and other sects, particularly the Messianic voices. Even so, the Batini took pride in that the new faith had achieved in a short time, in particular the development of rational scholarly culture that preserved and passed on ancient wisdom. Under Islam, the cause of unity was advanced through scholarship. Many important elements of the doctrine of unity passed into other cultures, including Christianity, though the medium of philosophical and theological texts. So powerful were the ideas from these texts that the Messianic voices could not censor them, try as they might. In this way, European civilization also benefited from Batini influence on Islam, even as it opposed religion that nurtured it. Likewise, the Ahl-i-Batin influenced the cause of unity through their unceasing efforts against the Devil Kings. The subtle one recognized that the infernalism was a path to be avoided, and that it offered mages nothing but corruption and death. In that effort, they made a common cause with other magical traditions. It was another part of unity. Batini texts on combating evil also found their way into European hands, and ironically, commoners and mages alike, and some of them against the subtle ones. There were some setbacks in the Renaissance, a brutal one in 1258 when the Mongols conquered Baghdad and gutted the resident Kitab Baha al-Din Zuhur. The Cabal of Pure Thought from the Order of Reason began to stalk and hunt them, driving them from two of their most potential nodes. Faced with a common enemy, they joined the Great Convocation, seeking as a way to bring unity. They took the seat of correspondence and worked subtly to increase the inter-tradition cooperation. So, we begin to reach the modern knights. Hey! From 1890 to 1914, the Ahl-i-Batin lost most of their holdings in the onslaught of the invigorated technocracy. In 1922, they left the Council of Nine Mystic Traditions, protesting the Council's apathy towards from what's going on in the Middle East and from Europe and kind of its influence. Batini masters vanished. Some few adepts and disciplines were subsumed in the Order of Hermes X Miscellanea. Batini only survived by directing the technocrats against the Tefini, a group of highly vulgar mages that soon began to match them. In 1979, the Batini enjoyed success when Alois Forches managed to drive out the Shah, who had been very technocrat-friendly. An alliance with other members of the Web of Faith resulted in a major defeat of the Union, who was forced to leave the Middle East. With homeland secure, the Ahl-i-Batin dispersed into communities in the Middle Easterners all over the world, striving only to further the goal of unity by working more subtly than ever before. That's kind of where we get into today. They've managed to have a victory over the technocracy, but they are not where they were in the old days. They've lost a lot. There's been a lot of damage. They're coming, but they're still there and fighting the best they can. Now, talk about how they're organized, because they do have a formal structure. Structure is important to understand the unity they seek, and the structure has two purposes. Instructing initiates, called, I'm going to butcher this one, Mustasawif, and instituting a system of governance for the entire sect. Broadly speaking, Ahl-i-Batin are divided into 5 Kangas, or lodges. Each lodge teaches slightly different interpretation of the Doctrine of Unity, but all endorse the overall mission of the sect, without the infighting that's typical in something like the Order of Hermes. The Kanakwas instruct initiates in the way of Ahl-i-Batin, called Tariq, and its purpose in the world. Initiates who complete their training are known as Murids, and are instructed in deeper teachings of the sect. In particular, Murids are taught the magical incarnations that let them warp in space and distance to the will of minds. Once these ambassadors, they're tested by a judge called a Kutab, who is a master of Batini who possesses the ability to read minds of others. A Murid is judged favorably by the Kutab if he is shown to understand the sacred geometry and mathematics, 2 disciplines called to be essential to the understanding of unity of nature, or the nature of unity. The next rank is the Murshid, which can be attained after years of study and perseverance. In the meantime, new Murids leave their Kanakwas and join smaller type of lodge known as Ziwiya. These are typically consist of 3 to 8 mages who work together to pursue a common goal. These Batinis function like a monastic group, sharing household and scholarly duties. Occasionally, they do admit non-mages into its membership to serve as assistants, but it's not really the norm, particularly post the Dark Ages. Individual Ziwiya act according to their own interest, which may minor from the sect as a whole, but do not have to do so. There's little coordination between these groups, and is by design. According to traditional practice, Batini do not know one another outside their own Ziwas. This helps to strengthen the relationship between members living in particular group. It also helps to preserve the secrecy. They find themselves beset by enemies on multiple fronts. Unfortunately, the structure has an unintended side effect, making it easier for infernalists and dark mages to infiltrate them without notice. Yeah. Despite this organization, the Ahl-i-Batin function cohesively, reasonably, much more so than an outsider might see. Disputes between Kanakwas is rare, and when they do occur, they are largely resolved in a reasonable, logical fashion. Batini treat such disputes as not as evidence of disunity, but as occasion to explore the limits of diversity within the unity. Particularly acrimonious disputes, which do occur from time to time, are adjudicated by quips, whose decisions draw upon the interplay of tradition and invocation to come at a just solution. Consequently, the Ahl-i-Batin have shown remarkable ability to adapt and survive even in the face of determined opposition. So it's sort of like they do have these larger groups, which are all part of the bigger group, and then the smaller 3 to 8 member groups that are kind of your study groups for the, most members, and they all do work together and have some clashing, but, we'll talk it out, or have someone judge things properly. They have ways to maintain unity. Talk a bit about their kind of culture and philosophy a little bit before we talk about the factions. They adhere to the Doctrine of Unity. It's a rubric, kind of a sum total of their ideas. Terms present only a character of the subtle one's philosophy, emphasizing certain elements, downplaying others. They do this themselves, though. But the fuller understanding of philosophy requires more than just a sort of summation. They basically put together this kind of summation that's for easy, but the understanding the true philosophy is something they have to dive into. It's the ultimate basis of an absolute monotheism of the Ahl-i-Batin. The belief, of course, that sees a public manifestation in Islam that rejects even Christian Trinitarianism, I'm not going to say that word correctly, as incompatible with the belief in only one God. The Batini, of course, have no real interest in sectarian disputes, as they believe all religions are but a pale reflection of unity they see in God. Nevertheless, their marked preference for non-alteration monotheism Islam. They prefer Islam, but they believe it doesn't quite match their unity. Most argue that Muslims' monotheistic doctrine provides simpler basis in which they build a more Baroque ideological structure, such as those found in Christianity and Judaism. Thus, it is a perfect vehicle to advance their cause. Basically, Islam closely matches a lot of their own beliefs. So, they piggyback off of it to help teach others about their beliefs and their kind of unity. But they also believe that it is only a smaller view of overall what is needed to achieve the unity. I guess that's an easy way of saying it. We'll kind of explain it a little bit more here. It's because of this that Batini are kind of a heterodoxical relationship with religion of any sort, including Islam. Many subtle ones are Muslim, but they aren't all. Even those that do adhere to a faith in some fashion would probably elicit condemnations from many devout followers. This is especially explicit in their understanding of God as connection to the Camille. Although God is the supreme principle of the cosmos and creator of the Camille, he is separate from his creation, whether by choice or by nature of the cosmos he created. This is the point of contention of the Ahl-i-Batin. That's why Camille is necessary. It is a conduct for which the divine can approach creation, and there are no other means to do so. The Camille thus functions as a repository for all knowledge and divine enlightenment. Human beings, whether mages or otherwise, are manifestations or extensions of Camille. They are the physical entities that, through experience, may gain access to wisdom contained within Camille. Only part of that human soul that has contact with Camille has any sort of divine spore or hope of immortality. The rest is simply a shell, a material vessel, that passes away as the body at death. This vessel includes such things as memories and emotions, meaning that they are perishable and not transcend to a higher soul's return to God. Needless to say, this is an unusual view. It's condemned by most believers in Islam and other monotheistic faiths as incompatible with their deepest tenets. The Batini, for their part, hold that he does not threaten personal immortality at least, only that unsophisticated version of that is held in unlettering believers. Moreover, they point to the writing of many natural philosophers like Aristotle in their defense. They hold that the purpose of human life and unity that they seek can only be achieved through the absorption of higher souls of the Camille, which itself is part of God. True enlightenment is the return of all things through to the Creator, through the process of sadly forgetting that there is a difference between individual souls and the Camille, which they acquire their knowledge of higher things. The renowned subtlety of the Ahl-i-Batin is in fact a consequence of their quest for unity. The Batini look for wisdom where it can be found, seeking a means to further erase the distinction between that prevents human beings recognizing their connections to Camille. At the same time, they realize it possible for any single individual to acquire knowledge necessary to complete the path of return to Creator. To this, they must rely on the aid of others, so they encourage cooperation between members of their sect, as well as between other groups, some of which may be even opposed to one another. The process of sharing information aids in overcoming the artificial boundaries that separate individuals from the Camille. Only in transcending these boundaries does one become possible for true enlightenment. Paradoxically, their philosophy also stresses the importance of self-knowledge, which is to say that, in the end, others can aid one's quest to return to the Creator only so far. Without proper mastery of oneself, no amount of assistance will bring the level of knowledge necessary to salute the separation between self and Camille. So consequently, asceticism is an integral part of Batin philosophy. The belief that one's denial of one's physical desires leads to understanding that the true self lies and is consistently of. This in turn leads to understanding that the self's relationship to the Camille and thus God. So it's a hard path to follow, the doctrine of evil. Its sport simultaneously urges the abandonment of prejudice and the self. It is predicated on the belief that all human beings are children of God and should return to Him through intellectual pursuits that encourage recognition of this fact. In both Muslim and Christian worlds, these two beliefs are not typically conjoined. Denial of one's physical desires is a common element in both, but does not lead to denial of self. The Batinian court reject this characterization as missing the central point of unity. That it denies only that which is not truly the self. Man's true nature is found in his higher soul, not those things that prevent him from seeing the essential unity and connectedness of all things. Nonetheless, this belief is a difficult one for many to accept, which has contributed to the limitations of their success. Okay, that was a big one, their philosophy. I hope you enjoyed diving into it. Let's talk about the factions. They have very little internal factions. Instead of having schools of philosophy, the Khanate. Each Khanate teaches a different mystical and philosophical emphasis. But the Batini are all taught to identify as Ahl-i-Batini mages first, and students of a particular Khanate second. It's a common saying that the fingers are all different, but only a fool says they're not part of the same hand, and that hand was not part of this larger body as a whole. Alright, let's talk about the 6 factions we can kind of talk about here. 5, 6-ish. Ikwa Kawa. Probably butchering that one a lot. These are reclusive, ascetic assassins, located deep in the Arabian Desert. They're composed mainly of men, with a few women drawn to their practices and training. They pursue righteous, rigorous, seemingly non-stop training in armed and unarmed combat, stealth assassination techniques, body control, adaptability techniques. It's similar to another group we're going to talk about in a second, Paradise Garden, that they also work in social skills like persuasion, interrogation, misdirection. The focus on extracting information, but before using physical interrogations, only using mental and telepathic means without harming the person's body. Their teachings rest upon 3 tenets, which are the master of self, self-reliance, and adaptability. A sacred assassin must know themselves fully and deeply, must strive to rely on himself with a wide range of skills, and be able to adapt to shifting situations like sand dunes changing to strong winds. They do have a strong branch, small branch in Mecca. Paradise Garden, which I meant, is a cluster of low buildings surrounded by citrus trees and gardens of jasmine and rose in Isfahan, Iran. They once were produced viziers, using whispered words and subtle mind magic to provide sultans and nudge the Middle Eastern and the world of that time towards unity, the Persian or Arabic worlds. But after technocracy's attacks, the school became militant in its training for the next generation of Kutuks. Remember, they're judges. They're trained heavily in mundane stealth survival techniques, persuasion, misdirection, mental defense, suggestion, and psychological manipulation. The training is so extensive that in almost most situations with sleepers, they'll lose little to no magic. However, they are rigorously taught magical techniques such as empathic manipulation, surreptitious interrogation through control, and correspondence magic for search and reconnaissance of targets. The current Mercier teacher believes that they can no longer offer advice from pillowed seats. They must learn the skills that will aid them to survive and wage an undetectable guerrilla war on the technocracy in their lands. The Silk Cartel is out of Smartland, Uzbekistan. They're the smallest continent. They focus largely on sacred geometry. They build labyrinths, mazes, gardens, pyramids. They will place higher importance on mathematics, alchemy, and chemistry. They see both aspects of transformative metaphors. As one learns to create a purifying elixir, they learn about the process of purification and how to apply it to oneself. As one walks a maze, they learn the landscape layout, but also their own mind and private thoughts. Those seeking entrance here must pass a mental puzzle. It is often a mental maze or staying lucid while on a mind-altering substance. The tests seem easy at first, but become more difficult as time executes them. Their low amount of students may cause them to maybe revitalize, alter these practices to make it easier to get more before they get subsumed in another group. The University of Light, the least paranoid of the Khanates, has a university based in Jerusalem. It's the largest state that passes ownership from one subtle one every decade or two, and heavily warded sub-base. It has been in operation since shortly after the Bikini were formed. The students, half of whom are women, are taught all the basics of summoning, binding, and warning. Stamina is a big focus of the students. Students are taught Hebrew and Arabic calligraphy, how to copy old textbooks, painstakingly create intricate glyphs, circles, and sigils for summoning, binding, and warning. They're also taught persuasion, backed with subtle mind magic, bargaining, particularly with the jinn, and etiquette with powerful spirits, and how to recognize celestial, infernal, and evil, invisible entities. The school is run by a woman, Miriam Ben Hamid, who is one of the oldest surviving Batini, and known to be quite rigorous in her training. Darushim, located outside Baghdad, and practice asceticism and self-denial. It hasn't changed since the Night of Fauna. Remember, that was one of those 2 original groups that helped found this, when they first experienced unity, and the Kaaba al-Akbar. They wear rough spun robes, rarely wear shoes, and attain mystical states of mind through fasting, self-inflicted pain, and spinning for days on end. They drum and dance, work themselves into a static state where they step outside the mind. Using the practice, they conjure correspondence and prime magic. They receive the flow of quintessence, which they call world blood. They let their consciousness flow to the heart beating and pumping of blood, which they believe puts them in the center. Once they reach a certain skill in Prime Magic, they fill themselves with contestants which they believe grant them closer connection to Unity. And finally, a group which is technically coming from all 5 Khanates. So this group is a Khanate itself to a degree. Remember I said there was originally 6, but 1 fell to Infernalism. The Kiwati, a term used to denote Hakini assassins. Remember there's one group that's particularly training assassins, but this group here historically comes from all 5 Khanates. Though the University of Light has only done so in extreme situations. So the University of Light, are good friends with their insular dealing with mind magic, doesn't really send a lot of assassins. All the other do. 2 current Khanates who provide the most assassins are, of course, the Iwan at Kawid and Paradise Garden. They're known not to just use skills acquired in other Khanates, but also they're also experts use of illusions, mind control to convince targets, drain cleaners tea, or to bring about an electric radio in the shower. They're supplied with poison, amulets, and other tools from the Silk Cartel. They really attack non-technocracy mages or other supernatural crealities. Though if a kindred hunts any mage, quality mark them down for execution. So, it's... If you don't bother us, we're going mostly after technocracy. Unless you do something as mage that's really bad, or a supernatural creature that's messing with them. You do something like kindred hunting a mage in their territory. Then you gotta deal with this group of Ahl-i-Batin assassins from across all the groups combined together. So yeah, we do have one Khanate that's basically training assassins, but they've got their own kind of way of doing things, and then, the joint assassin group also. But there you go. There's the Ahl-i-Batin. An interesting group because they have certainly found a deep connection with the cultures within the Middle East for many years. From advisors to Persian emperors to now where they're connecting deeply with Islamic teachings because they see a connection, a unity with it, if you will, in a lot of their own teachings. Though they do have this, in general, ancient talents, it can be seen that they are on the uptick in a way. They suffered a lot. Yes, they joined with the Council of 9 Mystic Traditions originally for about 500 years to hopefully fight against a technocracy. When they were kind of abandoned to the Order of Reason / technocracy when it became that, they basically had to fight on their own. And it's only now that they've gained some form of victory and can kind of find themselves coming back. They have interesting sets of philosophy that deal with this unity and definitely do connect up with some very deep religious tenets, even though they aren't quite connected with things like, especially even their closest cousin in this way, or close connection, Islam. It's not quite the same for their beliefs. But it doesn't mean that they aren't connected with it and don't have some understanding. They do believe it is close to them. Basically something for the masses that helps spread it a lot more than their own way of originally trying to teach this unity. But unity is what's important in the end. And I think that's why it's interesting to see that they, now that we've reached this kind of apocalyptic age, there's a lot of bad things happening, they weren't against joining another group. Disparate Alliance. Granted, it's not the same as, the Council of 9 Mystic Traditions. It doesn't have quite the same power vacuum. But it's a bunch of independent crafts. The Ascension War is in their own hands. And you know what? These 2 other groups, they've been doing their own thing for a while. They've gone outside of where we need to be. We need to work together. And Ahl-i-Batin is on board. I'll leave that there today. I hope you enjoyed. Remember, check out all my other stuff. You can see my schedule. Goes up on my social medias. That's my Discord, my Twitter /X, my Blue Sky, my YouTube. In the community section, I just put the schedule up of when I'm streaming over on Twitch, when I'm uploading things on YouTube. Just keep an eye on those. It'll tell you how, generally the schedule, slightly adaptable, but it gives you an idea of when I'm going to be live. And you can always check out my social media to know more. Do remember to give helps to the channel here. What do you think? Have you ever been inspired to play an Ahl-i-Batin character? Have you played with one? What do you think about playing one now? Do you have any good ideas? I do think there's some interesting characters that, I could certainly build with this. I don't have any big ideas off the top of my head, but it is very inspiring group to understand them and their concepts of movie. So, tell me what you think of it. Alright, do remember to go to those social medias, just get updates and stuff like that. And yeah, remember that other stuff like subscribing to the bell and stuff like that. I think I mentioned that. And honestly, farewell for now. You know, I'm gonna get going. Go hang out, go chit chat, maybe do another video. But until the next time, I bid you all out there a deep and wonderful farewell.